I want to remind you that we will be archiving today's presentation so that you can listen to it again and you can share it with other people. You can share it with other people. And so let us begin to master the fundamentals of A-plus leadership. I'm going to focus today on three major topics. Let's define leadership. Then we'll deal with the 5 fundamentals. That's the essence of it. And then I want to deal with next steps. Many of the things we talk about change people's mindsets. We give you skills that you can apply. But when it comes to being leaders and using leadership effectively, what I'd like you to be able to do is plan out today the next step in what you're going to do to be effective in doing this stuff. So let's begin. What do we mean by leadership? Okay, this is a definition that I've come across once, and I think it's one of the most effective ones because it says it right. It's a process, first of all. It's not about power necessarily. It's a process by which you influence group members to the achievement of its goals. So the goals are a function of the group, which could be the entire organization or some part of the organization, where the members view the influence as legitimate. It's important to understand that's a difference between being legitimate and not being legitimate in terms of the goals of the organization. You can sometimes have ones that aren't. It's also important to understand that this process of leadership really stretches across everything. There's an organization many of us don't like, Al-Qaeda, but I will use them every once in a while as a foil to make a point. It's a new form of organization in which the leadership is very powerful because its followership is so powerful. Think about it. There are people who are willing to die to be able to accomplish the goals. We have regular organizations where people don't have that kind of motivation. And they are influenced in terms of their mindset to be able to be so committed to do it that they're willing to take their life. They get the skills to whatever they do. But if you think about holding them accountable and monitoring them and educating them, they're all over the place, all over the world. So there's no eyeball-to-eyeball contact. It's a total virtual organization. And so leadership there is another process, okay? And they have clearly mastered a process to influence people toward its goals, okay, which its members view as legitimate. Let's get back to regular organizations, the ones you and I work in most of the time, and let's try to understand what's the difference between a leader and a manager. For you C-level people, the goal is very much to be a leader. Other managers are leaders as well, but it's a different role you're wearing. As I like to think, we wear lots of hats. Leadership's about setting the direction. It's where you're standing for a company and you're stating a vision of where the company is going to be years from now and how it's going to help the world in whatever way it's going to do its job. And the mission, which is really why people get up every morning to do what they do. And then the second thing a leader has to do is set the values and the cultural tone for the organization. So let's just take a simple example. Howard Schultz in Starbucks. The vision, if you know, if you've read his book, if you followed him, was to really create a third place for people. His goal was to provide people not just with great coffee, but to make it a place that was an experience bar anything else. Bar none, it was an experience that people would have. So people could think of their life in 3 ways. I live at home and I enjoy things at home. I live at work and I enjoy things at work. And I have a third place I can go to, kind of like Cheers. Everyone knows your name. It's a different place. It's a place where everyone can go to and use what they want and get great coffee and feel good about themselves. That's the vision. Now you can see the vision's changed because despite 5-10 years of push within the company to go beyond stores, there was resistance until the 1990s and the recognition that you have to expand beyond the stores, and so it's being a third place is no longer the critical part of the vision. The vision really has become to create an experience, whether it's in your office, at home, at a hotel, in a plane, that's beyond anything you could get any other way, and that's the vision. The mission is what gets everyone up in the morning to do their job. It's the people, the baristas who provide the food, the coffee for you. They come in motivated early in the morning, late at night, whatever time zone, to be able to come in and give you the kind of stuff that you want, making sure that it's fresh, making sure that you feel good, having a smile on their face, learning how to speak a completely different language. They don't do tall, medium, and small coffees, as we all know. That's part of the mission. It what drives people to get up every day. Our mission, for example, at Presentation Excellence, is to make heroes out of people, to help people unleash their potential in terms of things internally holding them back or organizationally holding them back so that they can succeed at what they want to do and make a difference in the world. And that's what drives us to get up at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, sometimes for clients, regardless of who they are. And the values and cultures deal with how people can interact with one another. It goes to the issue some of you raised about how do you bring a team and a community together. It's by having a clear set of values and culture that people understand. Now, once the direction is set up and the tone is set up, then the managers take over. They make sure that things get done right. It's done correctly. It's performance standards. So their focus is on issues related to implementation and execution. And so in a small organization, leaders and managers may merge a lot. In larger organizations, they separate out. And one of the questions becomes one of excellence in management, the scope of delegation. How many people can someone manage, and is it too large, and what do we do? For those of you who recently read an article in the Times about Google losing lots of employees and arguing it isn't, but it is, the reason is the culture that was set isn't working the same way. It's become more bureaucratic, as every large organization does. And understanding how to change that, how to create that kind of initial entrepreneurial, exciting, creative culture, whether you're 2 employees or 2 million employees, that's the challenge. And the leaders have to figure that out, but the managers have to get it done. And very often in producing it, they get lost in how to do it, and they come back to the silos, and that's part of the problem. Now, what's nice about the definition I've given you is that leaders are everywhere. So you are a leader. You may be leading your superior, your supervisor, who's a manager above you, as well as those people who report to you. And you're also leading in teams the people in the other groups. And so what you need to do is constantly focus on being a leader and not just managing the task. A leader is a people, a manager manages tasks. But you always have to answer a question, and that is, if someone's working with you and being asked to follow your lead, why should they? And that's really the critical part here. Why should someone follow your lead? And the answer is they're going to do it from 3 perspectives. They're going to do it from their head because it's rational. You've given them a direction, and you've given them a reason to do it by communicating it. You've done it from the heart. You've energized them, and you mobilized the team to do it. And what you've done is you've given them courage to be able to stand up against things that might bother them and move forward. So leadership's a full commitment. It's not something partial. You do it with all 3 elements, or you don't do it at all. And today's challenges are much larger than ever before. Today the world is truly flat, as Tom Friedman would tell us. We interact in companies that are flat. We work with companies all around the world. Companies are much more multinational. They're in all different countries. They're sharing information back and forth. Just reading a wonderful article about Volvo, which, as you all know, won the hearts and minds of people for the concept of safety, and is now a Chinese company. How does that change everything? Today, companies are constantly trading. They're outsourcing with foreign partners, or they're working with foreign partners, or we're the foreign partners. We're selling to foreign markets and customers, and we need to be able to understand their needs. Tonight, one of my students is doing a paper on the discount retailers and has to answer a question I know that I have on the paper: why has Walmart succeeded in some markets and failed in others, and had to sell its initial companies to others? And unless you understand that, you're not really dealing with the global challenge. Affecting all of that are the whole change in the way we communicate, because remember, it's about people. Today we live in a world of instant communications. I'm speaking to you and showing you slides no matter where you are. You could be in London right now paying attention to this webinar, and you're getting the message. We have instant communications. For those of you who have grown up in the last 15, 20 years, you're probably familiar with a whole new world of the Internet, of which one major occupier is Google. If you've been on the Internet in the last 3, 4 years, you're probably a generation that sees the world as Facebook. And there are 500 million people on it, but your whole world is on Facebook. And so you're communicating through Facebook. I watch my teenage sons as they do this, and it's fascinating to see. how the technology that keeps changing is changing. So they are constantly not only communicating while they're working on their homework, they're posting their homework to each other, getting feedback way before a teacher gets it, etc. In doing that, things keep changing, and that presents, as Clayton Christensen puts it, the innovator's dilemma. At what point do you decide to get rid of your own technology because it's going to become obsolete? Do you wait for someone else to make you obsolete, or do you make yourself obsolete? In the world of technology, think about Netflix struggling with this. They understood that you don't go to a store, you can do mail, so they create DVDs that do that. But they were smart enough to understand that people aren't going to be using DVDs a few years from now. It's already it's already like the horse and buggy in the 19-teens going down the drain, because people are switching to streaming. And maybe 10 years, 15 years from now, we'll all be streaming, and that'll be probably just about the only way they do it. So do they fight to hold on like Blockbuster fought to hold on to its stores, or do they give it? And you've just heard about their change in their economic model, that they've discounted the streaming price and raised the disc price because they understand it's moving that way and they can recoup some of their money that way. Every company, from IBM to Intel to Microsoft, has had to deal with the fact that if they don't bury their own technology, someone else will. But at what point do you do it? How do you recoup it? And how do you monetize? We have, as I said, a workforce that's virtual. So many people no longer work in their own, in the traditional offices. I work with major corporations that basically have desk spaces set up for people, and people come in and they report to literally lockers, and they then sit on the desks and work, and this way they can travel to 4 or 5 different offices around the world, and they can communicate. And there's sales forces that are all virtual. And so there's a whole new way to communicate to people. And these people have different motives, whether they're in your office because of different generational needs, different economic needs. The world's market has changed. Young people seeing it as a place to learn a skill and then move on because their brand is them. They're not an organizational unit that has to rely on the organization, and that's its brand. But they are also dedicated to whatever they are. And as we pointed out earlier, if you're part of an organization like Al-Qaeda, then you've got an entirely different set of motives, okay, and you can be a virtual workforce and be extremely powerful. We, as leaders, need to understand those challenges, how it's affecting our workplace, and change them, and each is different. And we do that. We solve each of those by focusing very clearly on the 5 fundamentals of A+ leadership. And so let's talk about those 5 A's. The first is authenticity. It's critical to understand your sense of purpose. Many people don't, and part of this whole thing is being true to yourself and walking the talk, knowing what it's about. Why are you at work? What are you trying to get from it? At what point are you no longer making a difference and it's time to move on? At what point are you no longer contributing to the whole? You need to ask those questions about your values. You need to stand for your integrity. We went through in the 2003 era the Enrons and the WorldComs and everything, and saw what happens when we lack integrity. And unfortunately, despite all the regulations, it's not going to really change a whole lot. It's about people and their values and the integrity and the values that are promoted by the leaders, enforced by the management and staff to be able to do it. As a leader, you need to walk the walk. You have to display trustworthiness. You have to project your confidence in what you do, and yet be humble in where you're going. And ultimately, if you're trying to convince people what to do, you need to exude your enthusiasm. Now, Brian Tracy makes a comment that sales is the transfer of enthusiasm. If you haven't transferred enthusiasm to people, they don't get it. And so we're all salespeople because we're trying to motivate all those members of our team to go where we're going. A master of authenticity, I've tried to pick samples of people. In his case, one of design, one of vision, one of creativity, but one that's not often mentioned is humility. It's his organization. He only takes $1 as a salary. And his claim to fame in terms of many of the things he's done is to recognize that the key is to know what you're really best at, what's your greatest core competency, and then saying no to the hundreds of other good ideas that are there. He said, as you see, I'm proud of the things we haven't done as I am proud of the things we have done. Okay? So he's a humble person. That's part of his authenticity and sticking to what it's doing and maintaining the relationships with other people in that way. The second fundamental is articulation. Articulating what is the vision of the company, the mission of the company, and the values of the company. And one of the things I try to drive home is in a business plan you deal with those issues. But what's very important to understanding when you're dealing with these issues is you need to look at them every single year and ask the question, are they the same? Starbucks' vision has changed. The mission for the different people has changed. Okay? The values, I think, are very much the same ones. Mr. Schultz started his company because his father died at a young age and he didn't have health insurance. And so when he created a policy that every part-time worker over 20 hours could qualify for full health care insurance, that's a value that's still there throughout all this period of time. The goals will change within the structures of where the mission's taking us. What you also have to do is articulate across all media. You have to be consistent. It's really very important. More important today than ever before because there's so many different parts of what you do. You need to focus on the content that you're saying and the style in which you're saying it. You need to focus on your behavior, the symbols you use, and the norms. I think one of the reasons we have so much trouble getting people to work together as a positive team and understand that sense of community and the values and getting out of their silos is the values that will keep them all together are not 100% clear. And the communication's inconsistent. One of my pet peeves, if you've been with me for other presentations that we've done before, is when I work with certain large utilities, I get the call, your call is important to us, we want to rush it through, therefore we're asking for some information up front, and then they pass you over the next hour to a whole number of people, none of whom have gotten that information, none of them have known what you're doing, and you have to repeat it again, and it's clear there is no consistency. So if I can give you a lesson for a leader, always be communicating, ABC, always be communicating, articulating, ongoing, check, do a business plan, make it a working business plan where you see it happening all the time. And understand when you do it, you're, as neuro-linguistic programming talks about NLP, 3 different levels of which you're doing it because we don't all communicate the same way. Some people are visualizers, they see your point. Others listen to you, they hear you. Some of them feel, well, they'll feel your pain. What you have to understand is it's not about what you want to say, it's how they're going to receive it. Again, it's an audience-driven presentation. Every communication is driven by the audience. How are they going to hear it? You want to try to mirror what they have because they have a comfort level. So instead of struggling to understand what you're trying to say, they right away feel the rapport, and now they're focusing on the message. And seeing it, hearing it, feeling it is very important. The third part to creating that team, the one that you've all picked up as a big issue, is alignment, which means we have to ensure that people appreciate the company focus. That's really an important part of communication, especially as the focus changes over time. Imagine you're in a company, as many of us have been in the last 5 years, where there have been retrenchments. Okay, the message is, to survive, to keep the greatest good for the greatest number, we have to let some people go. But does that mean that the culture is going to lose its values? Maybe we have to appreciate some of the new values even stronger. What we have to do is align their values with the company's values. So people who had to take a slight pay cut may have been offered greater performance reinforcements so that they really felt their values were tied to the ultimate goals of where the company is going from. You need to create effective teams, and you need to monitor them. We do, very interestingly, we do lots of review of people. 360 reviews, we do employment reviews once a year, twice a year, whatever the case may be. Very rarely do we really review the effectiveness of teams on a regular basis, seeing how effective that team is. Members change, and as microcosms go through its dynamics, that's what a group is, it's a microcosm, there are dynamics that will change. We need to create and sustain those teams. And we need to foster community. So when the new people come, what's happening is they're being socialized into the system and continuing the positive value, the alignment with where the company is going. So I try to drive the point home. You need to respect individuality if you want innovation. And two Wednesdays from now, we're going to focus on leading the innovative organization, how you do that. You want to avoid conformity, and you always want to be sensitive to cultural diversity. If you've done that, it's easier to align your organization. If they're aligned and they're ready to work together, now you want to activate them. You want to inspire people to do whatever it takes to get something done. And you do that through system enablers, the organizational structures of how they're working together, the professional development. 10 years ago, there weren't CLOs, Chief Learning Officers in organizations. We did training and development, but no one looked at the process, the long-term process of keeping people going. Today, the CLO does that to a much greater extent. We're developing people professionally in terms of their skills, their learning capabilities. Virtual learning is now a tool that fits. It's part of the blended learning concept, but it's also a critical part about professional development. You need to go through team building exercises from time to time, whether they're in the company, whether it's through a retreat. And you need to maintain reward programs that constantly reinforce that the ultimate value isn't the individual paycheck, but it's the values of the team and the values of being part of a team as part of the company. That means you really need to empower people to feel good about themselves and about everyone else. And so a critical part of that, I think, is courage. It's facing danger within the group, within the company, within the environment, with confidence, self-possession, and resolution. It's resolving that I can handle whatever you do. You know, Ken Chenault of American Express, CEO, says very clearly, in a crisis, you don't manage it with a manual. You do it by the values and beliefs. That's the critical part. Meet anyone in that company. That's what they're focusing in on. Where's the feeling for the people going? How are they moving forward? So you have to empower people both as part of, as within the company members, as well as within the teams. And that's a critical part of it. And in part, that means what you really need to do is create a sense of trust. Because people can't be activated to work together unless they feel they can trust people. So you need to always demonstrate your integrity, encourage people to demonstrate their integrity, and have those conversations of what's right or wrong. I teach ethics as part of all my courses, whether it's leadership, negotiation, business policy, because it's an important part. And while it's still in a classroom situation, I try to leave them with the hooks to be able to take it back to their work and ask the questions of what to do and how to do it. And finally, you need to walk the talk. Whatever you practice, you do. And I enjoy very much the questions that I get asked. Somebody was recently running for office as a president, and what was happening, they knew about a couple other people campaigning against them that were violating the rules. And so the question is, to what point do you blow the whistle and let people know it? And what point will people look at you as blowing the whistle and saying, you're creating a bigger problem by doing that. Nobody wants a tattletale. It's that sense of trust, it's that sense of walking the talk that you have to pull together. And in part, to do that, what you need to do is you need to be able to master influence. Because that's the key here, building a sense of trust. What you're doing is empowering people. That's how you're activating them. And how do you do that? By using a combination of logic, emotion, and power. We love to think that we're all rational, but we're not. And so the logic is part of what we do, but very often it's the rationalization, not for what we do, not the reason what we do. We do a lot of things based on emotion. Judge Frank in 1935 wrote a book about being a judge and makes the comment that he loves to think he's thinking it out rationally and he's reasoning it out with the law, but every once in a while it's the power of the emotion, how he feels that day about the defendant or the prosecutor, that's going to make a big difference in what he does. And in some cases, it's a power influence, where a person has so much power they can influence other people. You need to know what you have, what you don't have, and to use it. So some of the strategies that you might want to use to influence people that are usually very effective are things like reciprocity. It is better to give than to receive, because when you give, you build in the other person a sense of reciprocity that they want to give back to you. And so I have a colleague who always says, and every time I meet somebody, I want to hear what they want. I want them to know what I want, but I want to go first, because he's understood the power of reciprocity. Second is to offer a guarantee that you can stick by, and that reverses the risk. People don't want to change. Inertia means we want to stay in the position that we're currently in. Incumbents win 97% of the cases. So the way you get ahead is by saying, if you can take this risk and if you don't like it, we'll guarantee it. We'll make you whole no matter what. That's a powerful strategy if you can do that. And the final one is to get third-party credibility, whether it's a testimonial, get someone else to give the information. We all seek social proof. An example of that is you see a bunch of people as you're walking down the street staring up at the top of a building, and everyone else looks up. Because if they're looking up, there must be something to look at. That's the concept our brains go through as we look for causes, and then we do the same thing. And finally, as you present your arguments to people, keep this in mind. Kahneman won the Behavioral Economics Award, his team, for finding out that when people do what they do, they would rather avoid a risk than achieve a gain. In other words, we all think we do things because we want to gain something, but if there's a chance we're going to lose something, then we're less likely to do it. We have a number of people, for example, one of the companies we'll talk about at the very end that I work with is Vistage. I run a local tiger group for CEOs called Vistage New York. And there, when I meet with potential candidates, I try to explain to them all the benefits that they get of having a mastermind group of 12 people from other industries who they can turn to because they have different experiences, different business models, hundreds of years of experience, and can share that to help them make better decisions, be better leaders, and produce better results for the company and for themselves. But I'm always amazed that when I do all of this, I then can close with a simple thing. Understand it's a non-competitive group, meaning if you don't take this position, someone else in your industry will. That usually is what pushes people over. They don't want to risk that I've just offered all those benefits to their competitor. A master of influence, someone we all know, is Jack Welch, because he symbolized how to use power well. How he took a company that was having a lot of trouble, got rid of products, remobilized people, and when he got all finished, he produced a cadre of leaders that went on to take over many other companies. And so the key part is to understand something about how to use your power. The power is to staff the right people. So what you want to do is you want to hire people who are better than you are, okay? And you want to always understand you don't have to put someone else down in order to shine. That's power. It's understanding what you have to do, what you don't have to do, what will make it work, and exercising it. And the fifth fundamental A plus, which many of you understood, is accountability. Without holding people accountable, it doesn't go anywhere. So what you need to do is build decision dashboards where you can look at the process indicators, not just the scorecard indicators. In other words, it's not just with sales up and down during the year. Why? What are all the indicators you want to look at? Did we talk to enough customers? Did we put out enough bids? Did we not close enough? Which ones failed? Which ones worked? Why? At what point in the process did we lose them? Those are the indicators you want on your decision dashboard that help you make the decision. When you do ask for feedback, you want it to be objective. You want to know exactly what people think and why. You want to involve all the relevant stakeholders. As I mentioned to you earlier, you're a leader, and you probably lead someone who's your supervisor and someone who's your manager. In many cases of the audience we have today, we have a number of people who are in the manager or senior VP position, which means that it's definitely one person at least above you. You want to process issues carefrontationally. Sorry for the typo there. Carefrontationally, that means caring about the person, not confrontationally. You want to process the issue, figure out what the challenges are, and show that you care to get the right result. And when you get the answer, then you build new plans, adjustment plans that are going to take you to the next level. Things change, and we need to anticipate those changes, be ready for the changes. Great leaders focus on the fact that the world is going to change, and we're ready for it at all times. Hence, the innovator's dilemma is we will replace our technology. So as Gordon Moore did in Moore's Law, technology in terms of the power of the microchip will change every 18 months. It'll double. Therefore, we need to be ready to meet that. So let's put those 5 foundations together again. One is authenticity. Being authentic, being true to yourself, so people will trust you and follow you. Second is articulating what is the direction you want people to go in and the values and the morals that you want them to follow. Aligning people, focusing on the group spirit that brings together the individuals and the teams that they're going to create. So you have people that are working within a team and teams working within other teams. You want to inspire people and empower people through your structure and through the process of influence, thereby activating them to accomplish the goals that you've set for your organization. And finally, you want to deal with accountability, using feedback to adjust the process to achieve the goals that you're trying to accomplish. So, to the conclusion, if we put this together, what do we find about great leaders? They produce consistent, excellent results. That's the key. It's excellence, but it's consistency. And the reason they're able to do that is they engage in deliberate practice. They constantly ask the question, how do I do what I do better? When you think of great performers like Michael Jordan leading his team to so many successes, it's because they individually and as a group keep practicing their skills, the skills of the team, the mindset of the team, and making sure that they have the necessary system enablers. And as an organizational leader, are your computers up to par? Are they taking where they need to go? Are your communication systems working correctly? Are the tools right? Are the training correct? All of the things that you do to help maintain this mindset and maximize the leverage that skill sets give you, that's what your system enabler does. And to be consistent at it, that's great leadership. And with that, I want to thank you for joining today's presentation on mastering the fundamentals of A-plus leadership. Presentation excellence, we have a wonderful reputation. We've been around 15 years. Before that, we were bringing image, serving over 5,000 clients, including the top 500 Fortune 500 companies, leading investment banks and VCs. We've gone way past presentations, becoming a strategic ally, a real partner with our clients in terms of strategy, leadership, which is one of the reasons we're sharing our experiences today in mastering the fundamentals of A-plus leadership. We provide business development help, we provide leadership training, we provide obviously presentation training, and we do executive coaching. For those of you in the New York area, we offer one other advantage. We are a Tiger Group within the Vistage International Group, which is 50 years old and services 14,500 members. And what we do is we create a CEO group where we have non-competing CEOs working with each other as part of the process to grow, and I invite you to go visit the website to understand more of what we do. Again, today's presentation has been archived, so you're welcome to share